When Tomás saw the "Help Wanted" sign on the door of the old bakery on the corner of Elm Street, he thought it was his lucky break. Fresh out of culinary school and desperate for work, he couldn't believe his fortune. A job at a bakery known for its impeccable pastries and perfect bread, despite its shabby appearance. The place had been around for decades, and though the building was crumbling, the line of customers outside never seemed to shorten. The owner, Mr. Greaves, was an odd man, thin and gaunt, with hollow eyes that never seemed to blink. He spoke in short, clipped sentences, but he welcomed Tomás without hesitation. "You start tomorrow," he said, his voice as dry as the cracked walls of the shop. Tomás was thrilled. The next day, he donned his apron and got to work, learning the ropes from Mr. Greaves. The bakery's methods were unusual. There were no modern tools, no mixers or timers. Everything was done by hand in an old-fashioned oven that dominated the back room, its iron doors thick with soot and age. Yet the bread always came out perfect, the pastries golden and flaky. "You must never open the oven yourself," Mr. Greaves warned one day. "Only I do that." Tomás found the rule odd, but he didn't question it. The oven gave him an uneasy feeling anyway. Whenever he was near it, he could swear he heard faint whispering, like voices trapped behind the heavy iron door. But he brushed it off as his imagination. After all, he was new, and the bakery had a certain charm to weeks past. And Tomás noticed something strange. He was the only worker there. He had heard rumors of previous apprentices, but none were ever around. He asked Mr. Greaves about it one evening as they closed up shop. "The others moved on," Mr. Greaves said, his voice distant. Tomás didn't push further, though the response left him with a pit of unease. Late one night after Mr. Greaves had left, Tomás stayed behind to clean. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The whispers by the oven were louder than ever. They weren't in his head anymore. They were real. Curiosity overwhelmed him. He approached the oven, its iron door still warm from the day's work. His heart pounded in his chest as the whispers grew louder, pleading, desperate. Against his better judgment, he reached for the door. "Help us," a voice whispered. Tomás froze. His hand trembled. But the voice, was it coming from inside? He hesitated for a moment, then yanked the door open. A blast of scorching heat hit him, and what he saw inside made his blood run cold. Faces, twisted, anguished faces pressed against the dough, their eyes wide with horror. They weren't just trapped, they were alive. Their mouths moved in silent screams as their bodies melded into the bread, writhing in agony. He stumbled back, heart racing, and slammed the oven door shut. Suddenly, a cold voice from behind him broke the silence. "I told you not to open it." Tomás spun around to see Mr. Greaves standing there, his hollow eyes gleaming in the dim light. What are they?" Tomás stammered, backing away. "The souls of those who were too curious," Mr. Greaves said, his voice as emotionless as ever. "Each apprentice before you thought they could break the rules, and now they are part of the bakery, forever." Tomás's stomach turned. He tried to run, but his feet felt like they were glued to the floor. The whispers from the oven grew louder, more frantic. Mr. Greaves stepped forward, his skeletal fingers reaching for Tomás. "You should have listened. Now it's your turn to join them." Before Tomás could scream, the oven door swung open on its own, and an invisible force pulled him toward it. His body was yanked off the ground, his limbs thrashing, but it was no use. The iron door slammed shut behind him. The next morning, the bakery opened as usual. The line of customers stretched down the street, all eagerly awaiting their fresh bread and pastries. No one noticed that there was a new apprentice trapped inside the oven, his face twisted in eternal terror, his soul now part of the bakery's perfect dough. And outside the shop, a new "Help Wanted" sign hung in the window.